Okay, Kyle. So we got another ranked matchup. It's going to be another battle of a Pac-12 university versus a SEC school, and it's going to be the return of the national champions as they hope to repeat their title, the end of the Atlanta sports curse or the Georgia sports curse, or whatever we want to label it as. As obviously we got the Braves and we got the Georgia Bulldogs winning in the same year. Good if you're around those parts of the country, and I don't see any reason why Georgia necessarily couldn't repeat. They're going to be returning a lot of starters. They're going to be returning a lot of instrumental pieces. And then you just look at the recruiting numbers and the recruiting class. They certainly have a great opportunity to do it. Though last year's defense was just remarkable. If you want to break it down, I believe they were like 6.9 points in the regular season. And total points allowed. So pulling this up. So this is only points that the defense allowed for the entire 15 games, 132. So that's not counting pick sixes or special teams failures. 132 points, which averages out to 8.8 per game. That's how stingy the Georgia Bulldog defense is. And obviously, they lost some players to the draft. They lost Kobe Dean. They lost Trayvon Walker to the Jags. So that there are some moving parts, but the way that a machine like this is built, they just keep replacing that talent with more talent. Welcome in the Oregon Ducks. So Oregon, they're going to be moving on from Mario Cristobal, or Mario Cristobal moved on from them, I should say. And they have a new quarterback in Bo Nix, former Auburn quarterback. I just don't think that they're ready for this game. They're the number 11 team, but it feels like a country mile between them and Georgia, at least based off last year's Georgia team. And we talked about it in our Utah versus Florida preview, just the perception of Pac-12 universities versus SEC schools. So obviously, if Oregon has a good showing, this could really favor them in the polls later in the year. So it's important for them to go on the road and not look incompetent. But Vegas disagrees with that notion as they have them as 17-point underdogs. What say you as you look at this matchup?
Well, this is an interesting one because this Georgia team is going to be very similar to like those Clemson teams from the 2010s, not in terms of like play style or structure. I mean, Stetson Bennett is still their quarterback. The mailman, I call him the used car dealership, the Stetson Bennett Kia Ford Chevrolet of local Athens area. Yeah, Stetson Bennett is still their quarterback. And Georgia's going to be like Clemson because this is the hardest game on their schedule this year, and they are 17-point favorites. So Georgia is going to make the college football playoff. Georgia is not really going to be tested until Alabama. Now, like those Clemson teams with Trevor Lawrence, there's always the chance they're losing to NC State at halftime. There's always a chance that Missouri is winning at the end of a first quarter, or South Carolina pushes them to the wire. Like there could be a weird upset game somewhere in the schedule because this year's Georgia team is ranked third in the preseason polls, which means that Alabama and Ohio State, by virtue of bringing back I know Georgia brought back their quarterback, but Ohio State and Alabama bring back star quarterbacks who will be top 2 picks in the NFL draft, plus all of their 5 and 4-star players, means that those teams are projected to be ahead of Georgia, and Georgia's a shoo-in for the college football playoff. They'll play Alabama in the conference championship game, and that'll be really exciting. But on the road there, Georgia's never really going to be tested. And I think that's interesting to watch from the Bulldogs this year, which means this game might be a great way to view Georgia. Obviously, they'll be a different team by the end of the year than this year, both injuries, chemistry, play style, stuff like that actually matters in terms of like first half of the season is different than the second half. But this might be the biggest test that Georgia gets during the entire season.
Might be the biggest test, but I just don't think it's much of one. Even I feel like even hedging their bets and getting like a Pac-12 university, even a Pac-12 university that's been relatively dominant, it's just a lot of turnover. For the same reasons that I knocked Notre Dame, I have to come in this preview and knock Oregon. You change at quarterback, change at head coach are two things that are not easy to handle, especially early in the year. Now, the interesting part about that is obviously you do have the former Georgia defensive coordinator that actually is going to be the head coach in this matchup. So just tells you kind of like the branches of that coaching tree. starting to form for Kirby Smart, as he obviously branched off from Nick Saban and dominant runs. I mean, you look at all the coaches that those guys have around the league, and they're really setting the standard for college football in the same way Andy Reid does in the NFL. I will say Bo Nix, as much as we kind of like diss on him for being just kind of like that ilk of Auburn quarterback, at least he has some SEC experience.
Ooh,
So
yes,
maybe that
Bo
comes in a
Nix.
little bit handy here, that he knows that level of competition. That's not what a lot of these guys who play at these Pac-12 universities even have the opportunity to do. So I don't know how much it helps, again, when you're facing one of the historic defenses from last year, or at least the remnants of what was a historic defense that only added more 4-star, 5-star prospects to it. I think Georgia's going to roll. I don't have much more analysis other than that. Like, I'd like to kind of like talk about Oregon and as if they have a chance, as if this is just a really competitive, close ranked game. But I think part of the problem is the preseason polls is just kind of laying Oregon Coast off name reputation
Yeah,
as
I
opposed to
get
what they
that.
actually have.
The transfer portal makes it easier for Oregon to turn around immediately. Like, Oregon lost Mario Cristobal, but Mario Cristobal didn't bring a ton of players with him to Miami. He brought his whole coaching staff, but altogether, this Oregon team is at least relatively closer than they were before. Combined with the fact Oregon's probably going to win the Pac-12 North, because the Pac-12 North is shitty Stanford, shitty Cal, shitty Washington, who just turned over their coach, Washington State, who's actually okay, but just turned over their coach. Oregon State, Oregon just has resources upon resources ahead of Oregon State. So, this is going to be a truly terrible Pac-12 year, but Oregon will still probably emerge as conference champion because you mentioned Bo Nix. Power to Bo Nix, because he's my favorite story in college football because of I believe that college football players should be paid. They should not necessarily have a union, but collectively bargain. It's an inevitable step. They deserve the rights. They've been restricted for years. And 45% of college football quarterbacks at Power 5 programs switch teams in the transfer portal this last year. And that includes Bo Nix, who, for people who don't know, Bo Nix is the most Auburn quarterback in the history of quarterbacks. This is a guy who grew up rooting for Auburn, going to games as a child, 3-year starter at Auburn. And because Auburn's coach is going to get fired by week 8, Bo Nix transferred to Oregon, despite the fact he's like the most Auburn quarterback in the history of Auburn. And I love that Bo Nix had the ability to transfer to an Oregon team that will go 9-3, make the Pac-12 championship game, either play in the Fiesta Bowl or play in the Alamo Bowl, just like they did last year. Oregon's going to be a fine team. Bo Nix is the 12th best quarterback in college football for the 12th best team in college football.
Do you think that line holds up as well?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the only reason it wouldn't is if Georgia doesn't score 35 points. But, from all indications, there were backups on that defense last year that were 4.5-star recruits, and those players are also first-round prospects now. It's like how Najee Harris couldn't find the field for his first 2 years at Alabama, and then he got on the field and just blew up in his junior year and became a first-round pick. Georgia's got 4 or 5-star guys up and down that team, so they should win the game easily. And you're not going to find me betting against that betting line in favor of Oregon.
All righty, guys. Well, go ahead and drop below your predictions for this game in the comments. Still looking forward to it. It's nice to have football back, week 1 of college football. So that's exciting. And we'll see. Maybe the Pac-12 maybe makes a big statement. Hey, week 1, they certainly have the opportunity to do it. Big game against Florida, big game here against Georgia. So if you're going to prove you're one of the true Power 5 schools, go ahead and do it.
Arizona playing against San Diego State, of course. San Diego State's going to womp up on Arizona.
There you have it. All right, guys. Well, subscribe to the channel, like the video, follow us on social media, all that good stuff from Juju Talk Sports and Kyle Ledbetter. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.